Hi guys, Talisha from P3 here. Today what we'll be talking about is healthcare practitioners and podiatrists in particular and the use of advertising for orthotic devices and if the current practices that are being adopted by more or less the widespread community are actually doing more harm than good to the profession. So one of the main images that I'll be talking about is that real classic before and after image that you see plastered everywhere. And where this comes into play is I'm not sure what it's like in, say, the United States, but I certainly know that in Australia and the UK, that there's a few retail outlets that are starting to issue orthotic devices, and they're using these images, plus they're also cherry picking some of the classic biomechanical terms that we use in biomechanics, such as pronation, and then it's sort of being bastardized a little bit, so the overpronation, hyperpronation, all of the things like that. And so what it's kind of adding to this narrative that this is where there's an issue because podiatrists are doing this as well. It falls into that pronation is bad, neutral is good, and that's what we're aiming for. And that's what images such as this communicate. So they've got the classic before where someone's foot's rolling in, and then they've got the after image where they're sort of looking nice and vertical in that neutral alignment, which even that in itself, like neutral alignment, does that really exist? It's a very contentious issue there. Now, if we're being critical, one of the reasons that it's a little bit of a contentious issue is that we know for a lot of musculoskeletal pathologies where pronation was often pegged as the causative mechanism for these pathologies developing, over the years, research is sort of coming to highlight more and more that pronation in these instances often isn't the causative mechanism. Sometimes it might be a loose correlation in someone that has it's not even excessive pronation because we can't quantify that, but someone who, let's say that they do have an higher foot posture index score or something along those lines, some of those people are at potential higher risk of developing certain pathologies. So it's an increased foot posture index score and plantar heel pain. We know that people that experience plantar fasciopathy, oftentimes if they've got a certain foot mechanical profile, it can place them at an increased risk, but it doesn't definitely mean that they're going to develop that pathology. Same with the whole pronation is bad. Pronation is not likely going to cause a lot of the musculoskeletal pathologies that it's attributed to and that orthoses are prescribed to either treat or prevent. So with that in mind, what we need to realise is that the use of these inaccurate before and after images of someone standing on an orthotic device, it's actually outdated and it's not actually correct. So if we as a profession are kicking back and not happy with the fact that there's retail outlets using these images, prescribing orthotic devices that's honestly in a lot of cases well outside their scope of what they should be doing, then us as a profession, we probably should stop using them as well. So one of the reasons for this is with these before and after images where we've got that neutral foot held in this supposed subtalar joint neutral, is research has never actually shown that orthoses will hold someone in subtalar joint neutral. So why are we using these images? So when we're using images like this and then the narrative surrounding them in our advertising practice, it's actually causing a few problems because, for one, the information's incorrect. And I'm of the opinion that using this is actually quite lazy. And when we combine that together, overall, it is actually harming us as a profession. Now, when it comes to foot orthoses, there's a couple of really entrenched myths from either side of the fence. So we've got our real pro-orthoses camp, and then we've got our real anti-orthoses camp. And so there's some people that they think that any form of biomechanically related foot pain, everyone needs an orthotic device. Whether or not they actually think that they need that, or it's a financially motivated treatment decision, which that in itself very unethical, if that's one of the camps that we're in, that's incorrect. And then if we're going into the other side where we've got people going, no one needs orthoses, you just need to go barefoot, you need to strengthen your feet, that in itself is incorrect as well. Because when we're going into black and white thinking, that's not addressing the person sitting in front of us. So it's very incorrect. So some of the myths that I'm talking about is that orthoses will correct your foot posture or your just body posture in general. Not true, and literature supports that it's incorrect. Also, orthoses aren't alignment devices. And when I'm talking about orthoses, in this case, I'm talking about foot orthoses. I'm not talking about prostheses or ankle foot orthotics, anything like that. It's custom foot orthoses or prefabricated foot orthoses. So they're not alignment devices. And then the other thing is they're also not braces. So they're not going to stop movement at a certain part of the foot or stop movement of your feet. So they don't brace the feet. They don't improve our alignment. They're not postural correction devices. And then the other thing, and this is where the anti-orthotic people start to come into play as well, is they don't weaken your feet. So that's a massive myth that surrounds this. So if you use orthoses, it's going to make the muscles in your feet weak. And literature shows us that that's not actually the case. So that needs to be put to bed as well. And I think people, again, need to just embrace the grey area. And I think we really need to stop doing this black and white approach, because even this infighting that happens within health professionals where you're pro one or pro the other and we completely disagree with meeting in the middle, it's that in itself is harmful, because from the outside looking in, if you're a consumer or a patient and you're going, okay, well, this podiatrist is saying that orthoses are terrible, no one needs them. And then there's this podiatrist on the other hand that's, no, everyone needs orthoses and it's going to do this and it's going to do this. That is just harming. If we as a profession can't agree on an approach, then yeah, that in itself is, for the greater scheme, is harming us as well. And lastly, and it comes from both sides of the equation where it's very incorrect, where orthoses become this life sentence. So if you're someone that's very pro-orthotic, oftentimes, and it happens very regularly, where there'll be the reminders sent out every 12 months when the health funds tick over and get your new set of orthoses, and we'll just keep updating the orthotic script year in, year out, whilst, yes, this is good for the bottom line, is like, are we actually needing to do this? And does the person that we originally prescribed the orthotic device for, do they still need the orthoses? Sometimes, actually more commonly, probably not. So that in itself is a problem, and that adds weight, and where we get some criticism from the other side of the fence, where we've got the anti-orthoses bandwagons where, oh, they're going to weaken your feet and then you're going to be in them for life. It's not that at all. So a while ago on LinkedIn, I created a little bit of controversy, I would say, when I put out my opinion as far as what I thought orthoses were, and that is, I don't feel that they're alignment devices, postural correction devices. I feel that they're load management devices. And that sentence in itself caused a little bit of kickback, because I think what happened was a lot of people's definition of load varied. So this is after a lot of back and forth, the definition that we came up with that achieved a pretty decent consensus. And this was from some people that specialise in foot orthoses, specialise in biomechanics, and they're international speakers and professors in these areas. This is the definition that we came up with. So custom foot orthoses are an in-shoe medical device that's designed to alter the magnitudes, temporal patterns and locations of plantar reaction forces in order to optimize foot and lower extremity function via altering forces and feedback acting on and within the lower extremities' neuromusculoskeletal components to treat pathology and or decrease the risk of potential future pathologies occurring. So with this, I will still maintain that foot orthoses are not alignment devices, and they are not imbalance and or postural correctors, and they're not braces. So if we scoot back to why I feel that the really inaccurate before and after picture is actually harming us as a profession, it's one thing I can very much appreciate, and I deal with this daily in clinical practice as well, where it's very difficult at times to communicate complex information about a body or a system to someone that doesn't have any understanding of it. But that in itself is our responsibility as health practitioners. to learn how to communicate with people that have a lower level of health literacy and different levels of understanding, and us being able to communicate to them what is happening with their body, why we're, our clinical reasoning as to why we're recommending something, and working with them on their actual treatment goals. So whilst I do feel that originally these images were created from a very well-intentioned place, and for the most part I feel that practitioners, when they're using these images at present, it is again from likely a well-intentioned place where they're just trying to communicate a complex piece of information as simple as humanly possible. But where the problem is one, like I said, it is incorrect. We know these are incorrect. And two, where this is sort of coming in and creating a bit more of a problem, is because we know this is incorrect and we know that retail outlets are using these images incorrectly and cherry picking health advice and basically making a lot of money off this. And I'm not going to name any of those retail stores in particular, but there's some that exist, and they're very good at fleecing a lot of money off people, and it's usually in the realm of $1,500 for 2 pairs of orthoses. Oftentimes there will be adverse reactions as far as flaring an injury or pain, and then there's no recourse. And that's looking at it from the health practitioner lens. So pretty much all of the people that I've ever come across in clinical practice has had a bad experience with some of these retail outlets because they haven't got the response that they were after or promised, or alluded to as far as the promises go, which, as we know as health practitioners in our advertising guidelines, we can't make promises on outcomes or advertise based on outcomes. But that's a video for another time. Now, so that's a problem in itself. So one, if we're using these images that we know are incorrect, and then there's retail outlets that are cherry picking the language that we use as health practitioners, and they're taking images that current health practitioners are using and they're mimicking that, and they're basically doing it as an undercutting of podiatry or health practitioners in general. So we're essentially being on the same playing field. Now, it's one thing, so yes, we know that's wrong. We know that the retail outlets shouldn't be doing that. So I don't think that we can just sit in a position and go, they shouldn't be doing that. We are the experts in lower limb biomechanics, etc., etc. People should come and see us for orthoses. If we're using the same incorrect information as what these retail outlets are using at present, because it doesn't differentiate us. So if we're going, okay, well, we're the experts, but we're going to sprout the exact same misinformation that these retail outlets are doing as well, then that's where the harm is coming from, because we're not actually setting ourselves at that step above like we should be doing. And this is where, from here, what we need to do, and it is very difficult because explaining lower limb biomechanics is quite complex, but again, that's a responsibility, and the onus is on us as a health practitioner and also the professional bodies to be able to get the information out there to clients and the general population. So we need to get clear on what orthoses actually are, what they actually do, what they don't do, and how they'll be used. So with this is what they do is it's that altering the internal loads to manage an injury or potentially decrease the risk of injury occurring. Getting clear on what they don't do. They're not going to correct your posture. They're not going to magically align your feet into this fabled neutral position. And how they'll be used, they're not going to be a life sentence. They may be a temporary device just to help manage something for the short term, or they'll be used intermittently. So me personally, with my orthoses, I use them quite regularly, and it chops and changes. So some days I can go for a run without them and there's no issue. But then there's other days when my body's not feeling too fantastic, I will use them. And this is quite similar to people if they have, say, reading glasses, which I also have reading glasses. I can go a year without using them, but if I'm going through a period where I'm a little bit tired, my eyes are straining, I've done a lot of computer work, I might have a week or two where I need to use them just to settle things down. Then life changes, body adapts, and off we go again. So whilst, yes, it's a very difficult problem to solve, and it's probably a little bit of a triggering topic, because if you feel personally attacked by this, it's not a personal attack, but if you do feel personally attacked, then you're probably the person that does need to hear this. And so what I feel that we need to do is getting clear as a professional body and a unified approach, again, on what orthoses do, what they don't do, and how they'll actually be used for a patient. And I would actually like to hear your input. So what are your thoughts and ideas on how we can overcome this problem that's becoming quite entrenched and a lot of clinicians are facing because of what these retail outlets are doing? So regardless of the argument for orthoses, anti-orthoses, wherever you sit on that spectrum, I think one thing that as health practitioners we can agree on is that we do need to have an individualised approach to our patient care. And my area of expertise is exercise therapies and rehabilitation. So we do have a free downloadable resource for practitioners called the Movement Prescription Blueprint. So what the blueprint does is it's a template that guides clinicians through the exercise prescription process, so helping you identify your client's goals, your therapeutic goals, and helping you formulate your exercise prescription. And the whole aim of the game with this downloadable resource is to improve your treatment outcomes by creating a really individualized care plan and management plan for your patient. So if you'd like this free resource, head to progressivepodiatryproject.com/blueprint and you can grab it there. And so this is Talisha from P3, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.